Adding and subtracting fractions. Add. Write the answer in lowest terms. Here I have three fractions that I want to add together. Now notice that all three fractions have the same denominator. In order to add fractions, we want the denominator to be the same. So this makes it easy because all we need to do is add the numerators together and then place it over the denominator. So 2 plus 5 plus 1 is 8. So our answer is 8 over 11. Subtract. Write the answer in lowest terms. Here we have 17 over 30 minus 7 over 30. Again, in order to add or subtract fractions, we want to have the same denominator. Here we do have the same denominator. Each fraction has a denominator of 30. So this makes it easy because we just need to subtract the numerators and place that over the denominator. So 17 minus 7 is 10, so my answer is 10 over 30. But we want to write the answer in lowest terms. So I want to reduce the fraction by dividing the top and bottom by a common denominator. 10 and 30 are both divisible by 10, so we can divide 10 by 10, which is 1, and then 30 divided by 10 is 3. So my answer in lowest terms is 1/3. Find the least common denominator, or LCD, of the group of fractions. We have 1/3, 1/8, and 1/12. We want to find the denominator that they have in common, or the least common denominator. So we're going to take the denominators, which is 3, 8, and 12, and then factor each into a set of prime factors. A prime factor is a factor that's only divisible by 1 and itself. So with the number 3, what times what equals 3 is 1 times 3. And each one of these factors is prime. Now if we look at 8, we want to list two numbers that when multiplied together give me 8. So I know 2 times 4 gives me 8. Well, 2 is a prime factor because the only factors are 1 and 2. 4 is not a prime factor. I can factor 4 even further because I know that 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have the set of prime factors for 8, which is 2 times 2 times 2. Now I want to list two numbers that when multiplied together give me 12. That would be 3 and 4. 3 is a prime factor, but 4 can be written as 2 times 2. Now that I have the prime factors of each denominator, I'm just going to write out the prime factors in an organized list. Now we're going to look at the factors of each denominator and write down the greatest number of times each factor appears in any denominator. We don't need to write down the number 1 because 1 times anything is 1. So we'll look at 3 first, the factor 3. Now, how many times, or what's the greatest number of times that 3 appears in any one group? Well, 3 appears once in this group, 0 times in the second group, and only 1 time in the third group. So the greatest number of times that 3 appears is once. So we'll just write down 1, 3. Now we're going to look at the second group, which has a factor of 2. And we want to write down the greatest number of times that 2 appears in any one group. So if we go to the top, or the first group, we see that 2 appears 0 times in the first group, it appears 3 times in the second group, and it appears 2 times in the third group. So 2 appears the greatest number of times as 3 times. So we'll write down 3 2's. Now, I already did the 2's, so I don't need to do another 2. And I already did the 3, so I don't need to do another 3. So I listed all of the factors and the greatest number of times that the factor occurs in each group. So now to find the LCD, all I need to do is multiply these values together. And 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 gives me a value of 24. So the LCD is 24. Find the sum. Write the answer as a proper fraction in lowest terms or as a mixed number in lowest terms. Here I have 1/2 plus 3/14 plus 1/4. In order to add these fractions together, I need to have the same denominator. So I'm going to have to find the LCD. I'll write down my denominators, which are 2, 14, and 4. Next, I want to write the prime factors of each denominator. The prime factors of 2 are 1 times 2. With 14, two numbers that when multiplied together to give me 14 are 2 times 7. And 2 and 7 are both prime factors. So I can write the prime factors as 2 times 7. And then for 4, I have the prime factors of 2 times 2. Now I'm going to find the LCD. To find the LCD, I'm going to write the greatest number of times that each factor appears in any one group. So if I look at the factor of 2, 2 appears 1 time in the first group, 1 time in the second group, and 2 times in the third group. So the greatest number of times that 2 appears in any one group is 2 times. That means I'll write down 2 2's for the LCD. Next, I'll look at the second group, and I have a 2 and a 7. I already wrote down the factors for 2, so I'm going to look at the 7. 7 appears 0 times in the first group, 1 time in the second group, and 0 times in the third group. So the greatest number of times that 7 appears in any one group is 1 time. So I'll write 7 down once. If we go on to the third group, we have 2's, which I already wrote down. So I can go ahead and find my LCD. My LCD is found by multiplying 2 times 2 times 7 together, which gives me 28. Next, I want to rewrite each fraction so that they have a denominator of 28. First, we'll rewrite 1/2 as having a denominator of 28. To do that, you need to ask yourself, 2 times what number gives me 28? Well, 2 times 14 gives me 28. Whatever you do to the bottom number, you have to do to the top number. So I'm going to multiply the 1 times a 14, which gives me a 14 on top. So 1/2 can be rewritten as 14 over 28. Next, we'll rewrite 3 over 14. 14 times 2 gave me a value of 28. So I'll do the same to the top. 3 times 2 is 6, so my new fraction is 6 over 28. Now I have 1/4. 4 times 7 gives me a value of 28, so I'll do the same to the numerator. So 1 times 7 is 7. So 1/4 is rewritten as 7 over 28. Now I'll take my rewritten fractions and add them together to find my sum. When I rewrite my problem so that each fraction has a denominator of 28, I get 14 over 28 plus 6 over 28 plus 7 over 28. Now that they all have the same denominator, I can just add the values in my numerator position and place that sum over the denominator of 28. So 14 plus 6 plus 7 is 27. That means that my answer, or sum, is 27 over 28. And this is my final answer because 27 over 28 cannot be reduced in lowest terms. This is as low as this fraction can go. So 27 over 28 is my final answer. Subtract. Write the answer as a proper fraction in lowest terms. 7/15 minus 1/3. Here we are subtracting two fractions with different denominators. In order to subtract the fractions, we have to have the same denominator. So I'm going to find the LCD. First, I'll write the prime factors of 15 and 3. So the prime factors of 15 are 3 times 5. The prime factors of 3 are 1 times 3. Now I want to look at each group and write down the greatest number of times that a factor appears in either group. So if we look at 3, 3 appears 1 time in the first group and 1 time in the second group. So the greatest number of times that it appears in any one group is just once. So I'll write down 1, 3. 5 appears 1 time in the first group and 0 times in the second group. So the greatest number of times that 5 appears is 1 time. So I'll write down 1, 5. We don't need to do the factor of 1, and we already did the factor of 3, so my LCD is just 3 times 5, which is 15. Now I'll rewrite the fractions so that they have a common denominator of 15. If I look at the first fraction, 7 over 15, that already has a denominator of 15, so I do not need to rewrite that fraction. Next, I'll look at 1/3. I need to rewrite it so that the denominator is 15. So 3 times what gives you a value of 15? Well, that would be 5 because 3 times 5 is 15. So I need to multiply the top by 5. And 1 times 5 is 5, so 1/3 can be rewritten as 5 over 15. Now I'm going to rewrite the entire problem so that each fraction has the denominator of 15. And this becomes 7 over 15 minus 5 over 15. Now I'll subtract the numerators and write it over the denominator of 15. So 7 minus 5 is 2. And then 15 stays the same. So my answer is 2 over 15. And this cannot be written or reduced any further since there isn't a factor that's both divisible by 2 and 15. So my final answer is just 2 over 15.